United States of America, anyone can have health care. We need to work on it. It needs to be done. This isn't the act that we need, but we need something in order for our health care to be better.
Okay, thank you, Skip. Dave, do you want to rebut those remarks?
Well, I will say that I do think that there are some people that are already benefiting. We have people who are under the age of 26 that were without health care that now are able to get health care on their parents' health insurance as a result of the Affordable Care Act. We have children who are no longer being denied health care coverage because of pre-existing conditions. And so it's a significant number of people that are already benefiting from that. And as I said, you know, there are parts of this law that we probably need to look at and need to be re-examined, need to be improved. But I am in favor of moving forward with it so that we can get on the goal of making sure that all of our Colorado citizens have appropriate health care.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Skip, you get this question first. One more health care question. What do you know about the state's plan to implement a health care exchange program?
I know that it's in the works, and again, 1982. We discussed, and we had a group of people that got together. That was probably the same time that I was on the State Workman's Comp Board that had been placed there by Governor Lamb. And there were many insurance problems that came to our fore at that time. I think that there are some pluses, of course, in this that we need to look at. There are some negatives that we need to be aware of, but it's already in the process of working. Let's work on it. Let's come across with the best program that we can. Let's get rid of the things that aren't good, and let's keep the things that are.
Okay, thank you, Skip. Dave, you get 2 minutes to answer the question, what do you know about the state's plan to implement a health care exchange?
Thank you. Effective and appropriate access to health care is important for all Coloradans. I communicate regularly with Jim Reesberg, the former House District 50 representative and now state insurance commissioner. Jim's working very closely on the development of the health benefits exchange in Colorado. In his capacity as commissioner, Jim is very involved and indicates that the exchange will be in operation in October 2013. I think it's great that Colorado stepped forward in a bipartisan way to create the exchange instead of waiting for federal government's exchange plan. We could have waited, but we instead chose to move forward and develop our own plan, and I applaud the state and the legislature for doing that. We must continue to find ways to get better health outcomes and contain health care costs. These are the keys to helping individuals and businesses obtain affordable health insurance. Employer-provided insurance can cause job lock, where talented professionals, especially those with young families or other dependents, have a harder time accepting short periods of unemployment in order to find a job that maximizes their career prospects. A state-run exchange, if it can overcome the challenges of adverse selection and help reduce this problem of job lock, will help loosen up the Colorado employment market and mean a more efficient pairing of talented employees with employers that need their skills.
Thank you, Dave. Skip, you have the opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal.
Well, again, I don't think anyone out there and anyone in the audience thinks that we ought to be against health care, and I'm certainly not. In fact, I'm for all of the health care that we have. And two things that Dave hit on was we need to learn to live healthier from one standpoint. That's something that I think is important through education. And we're doing that. And I did that a lot through 4-H as an educator. And we need to continue to work on in those ways. Do we need to have a problem with some employers saying, no, I'm not going to provide health insurance now at all because of what's coming in and taking place? Then we got a problem. And I want to see that solved. It's a tough thing. We need to work on this. We need to work on it together.
Okay, thank you, Skip. Next topic is budget. And Dave, you get to go first with this question. The economic downturn has hit education funding especially hard in Colorado. Would you support a plan to revise the funding mechanisms for K-12 and higher education And if so, what changes to the current model would you suggest?
Well, we have a constitutional Gordian knot with 3 amendments affecting our school finance formula: Tabor, Gallagher, and Amendment 23. The voters need to make a decision about which one of these need to go before we can begin to untangle the contradictions inherent in slashing revenue for K-12, but the Constitution demanding yearly increases in funding. At the end of the day, it's up to voters in Weld County to decide if they want to increase funding for our schools with a bond initiative or a mill levy increase. Until then, I will work to uphold the Colorado Constitution, which I have sworn to uphold by balancing the state budget in a fair way, preserving as much K-12 and higher ed funding as possible. I will also work to ensure that Greeley-Evans School District 6 gets its fair share of funding through the School Finance Act. We want our Greeley and Evans kids to have the same opportunities as the kids in Denver and Cherry Creek have. Your zip code should not determine your education. It's against the very foundations of equal opportunity for all that our great state and country were founded on. Everyone talks about how important education is, but it's time to stop just talking about how important it is and get down to common sense solutions that actually solve this funding problem.
Thank you, Dave. Skip, and I'll repeat the question real quickly. Would you support a plan to revise funding mechanisms for K through 12 and higher education? And if so, what changes would you suggest?
Interestingly enough, Randy, and I think everyone in the audience understands this too, education is so vitally important. It was important to my ancestors as they came here and helped set up some of the first schools. It was important to me when I chose to continue working with children on an educational process through 4-H. It's important when my children and grandchildren go to school. It was important when I helped my grandchild find a school within Greeley where he was able to really blossom. A school that wasn't necessarily a part of the public school, but is a part of it now as a charter school. We have a lot of charter school chances and a lot of things. There are a number of things, as my opponent talked about here or alluded to, there are a number of ways that a local entity can indeed help with that school and help with the funding of the school. Through local bonds, through local fundraising. I would like to see that done. And education, to me, is one of the most important things that they are. We have a knot, and that knot is certainly there as far as education is concerned. But part of that knot also is what's happening in Chicago. And that's a knot with them not getting together as far as unions and the schools and everybody is concerned. That is a problem. We need to see that the children are the ones talked about first in education, not the other people around them. I'm for the children. That's who I want to help and who I want to support. And yes, let's look at some other funding and some means by which we as Weld County, as Greeley, as Kersey did. Kersey's doing all right. Why isn't Greeley? Come on, Dave. It's a good thing. Let's those local schools, which my Constitution says is the best thing, is local is best. Let them do it.
Okay, thank you, Skip. Dave, your chance for a rebuttal.
I alluded earlier to common sense solutions, and I agree that we really always need to look at how do we really impact student learning. Let's really focus on that interaction between teachers and students. Right now, we have a system that really is focused, that doesn't really provide much focus for that interaction between teachers and students. Teachers are teaching to the test, students are memorizing. We have an accountability system that focuses on low-level learning instead of these big targets that we really need to shoot at. We're spending a lot of time teaching to information and memorizing procedures instead of helping students learn how to think. And so funding will come as long as I think people will understand the fact that the schools are being effective with the way they spend their money and are hitting those targets.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. We'll ask one more education question, and Skip, you get to go first this time. Are Coloradoans paying enough to fund education, K through 12 and higher education? Should we be paying more? Why or why not?
Are Coloradans paying enough? You know, Randy, I don't know. The students that are getting more than any other students in the United States of America per year are in Washington, D.C. The students who are performing worse than any other school in America is Washington, D.C. There are schools in northern Minnesota. There are schools in North Dakota where the funding is significantly less, and yet they're doing wonderfully. They're doing a great job. Should the funding be more? Well, yes, and we could do it perhaps through any one of a number of means. Again, the more local, the better. That's what it's all about. I attended a workshop that they had down here about education that the Greeley School District had, and this gentleman came in and he said, you know, we've pushed these kids into boxes too often and too much. We need to let them go and we need to let them learn. Again, I'll refer back to my grandchild, who was pushed into a situation where he was able to pass through 2 years of what Greeley schools would say was their grades in 1 year, because he was able to do that. I think we need a lot more flexibility for the kids. I think the kids are a whole lot smarter than we give them credit for. And we need to have, the teachers need to be backed up by the administration. We need to quit teaching to tests. Boy, Dave, you're absolutely right. Say that again. Tell it to as many people as you can, and let's get these kids educated, because that's my goal. It isn't a test.
Thank you, Skip. Dave, are Coloradoans paying enough to fund education, or should we be paying more? Why or why not?
Well, Forbes consistently ranks Colorado 4th or 5th in the nation as one of the best places to do business. And while I think that's great, we can do better. The states that are number 1 and 2 have one big difference. They invest in their K-12 and higher education systems. We deserve to be number 1. And I believe we can get there if we invest in a world-class K-12 and higher education system that really prepares our students to compete for jobs in the future of a global economy. And this concept of creating a system where we teach to the test is lowering that standard. We can create a higher quality system if we really look at performance instead of memorization. And it takes effort, it takes sophistication, and it takes a great system to develop assessment that measures whether students are really performing at that level that requires them to really learn how to think, not just recall information that they've memorized. So I think we can get there. I think the taxpayers have shown clearly that they want accountability, and we should never push back on that. We should be accountable. Our schools should be accountable and demonstrate that students can perform well. But we need to have a much more robust performance measurement that really gets to the point of our students performing the way we want. Can they really problem solve? Can they really analyze? Can they really stand on their feet and think? Right now, we don't have a system that measures that, measures very narrow things. And so when we compare test scores and say one district's doing better than another, it's an incomplete system. We need a better way to measure the performance of our students.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Skip, your chance for a rebuttal.
Well, I don't know what Dave said, that the kids in Washington, D.C. were doing better than the ones in North Dakota, and we just didn't know about it. But we'll go on from there. The more local, the better we are. Many school districts in the state of Colorado, 2 years ago, when everybody was talking about nobody's going to pass anything on taxes, passed additional taxes for schools. Why? Because they made it known that they were going to take that money, utilize it properly, educate their students better, work with them better, and provide a better product. We need that. Dave, you're right. Don't teach to the test. But money doesn't solve every problem, and I'm glad you said that.
Okay, thank you, Skip. I've got one more budget question, but I'm going to skip over it so we can move on to a different topic. I want to be able to hit several topics here so we have time for audience questions also. So let's move on to the topic of business, and Dave, you get to go first with this one. Workers' compensation in Colorado is administered by Pinnacle Assurance, which is a public-private enterprise. Last year, Governor Hickenlooper